Thanks so much for being here on my show. My name is Jennifer Sang. I'm very happy to introduce a very interesting guest here on Prosperity To Do List. His name is Michael Alexis, and he's a fellow Canadian. So thank you, Michael, for coming here. Can you talk a bit about or a bit about your background and what we've been doing before you start your blog, Writers Views?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'd be happy to. I think, first of all, the information you have about me is a couple of years old. What I had on Writer Views in the About page, I read in 2011, so things have changed, and I'm sure that'll come out during the interview. I'm now about 1 month away from being a lawyer, and as well in the past, around the time that I wrote that, I had started my own company. So that was called Save Rally. It was like Groupon, but just for students at my college. And I also do freelancing work. So the blog was actually, probably goes into your second question,
Oh, okay. So you basically decide that you want to transition into something else. Like
yeah.
Instead of being in the corporate role, you want to be a blogger.
Yes, I knew that I wanted to transition into something else. What I didn't know that it was blogging for sure. So when I finished law school about a year ago, I looked at all of the other things I could do, what I was interested in, what I thought I could do well at, where I thought I could earn money, and I developed sort of a system for figuring out what I actually wanted. And as you know, I spent a large part of last year in China, and this is something that I think the viewers could apply to their own lives. Maybe if they're unsure of what they want to do in the future, if there are various options open to them. And that is, instead of just thinking, instead of just assuming I knew what I wanted to do, I actually went and tested it. So the three things that I did while I was in China were write reviews, I worked with my friends to have a restaurant, and I worked with an app company. And I thought by doing each of those things, I could figure out if, with write reviews, by interviewing very, very successful writers and bloggers, whether or not that was a life and lifestyle that I wanted. Similarly, with working with my friends that have a couple of very, very successful restaurants in Beijing, whether or not I'd want to be in the food service / business industry in China. And the third one with the app, whether obviously go into technology and continue with entrepreneurship on that path.
Okay, I see. But you also went to China, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and you were writing Chinese. When I read it, I was so shocked. Like, oh my God, your Chinese is so good.
Yes, yeah.
How long did it take you to start writing and actually speaking?
It kind of happened in two steps. When I was in undergrad at the University of Guelph, I studied Mandarin for about 8 months, and that was really valuable because I had a professor who was just a really good teacher, and she taught us, some of the basic vocabulary and pronunciation and how to read and write. And all in all, in those 8 months, I probably learned about 500 words. So enough to kind of get it, but not enough to communicate, right? Not enough to have a proper conversation. On a little side note for a second, when I went over to China the first time in 2008, I thought I was really cool. I know a little bit of Chinese. I could go to a restaurant. I could order myself lunch. And what actually happened was I sat down, looked at the menu, and realized the only food words I knew were like banana and rice. So I wasn't going to get very far. But because I had that foundation from university, then I could just go get my dictionary and learn like all the food words, right? Like all the vegetables, all the meat, all the noodles or whatever. And that goes a long, long way to be able to eat there. And so I spent the summer there teaching English and stuff, and then went back after law school, and spending the year there is when I really improved a lot. So I guess did two things. One was I have an app on my phone. It's called Weixin, WeChat, whatever. And I just connect with Chinese people, and we'd type all day. And if there was a word I didn't know, I'd look it up in the dictionary. And over time, you accumulate more words. You can just read it all as well as writing it. And then also, as far as speaking, conversing goes, just, meeting friends for lunch every day or for coffee or for going to the park or whatever, and just, forcing yourself into immersion.
Oh, okay. So you really enjoyed that, like, the whole experience living there for, living in China.
I don't know if I enjoyed the whole experience, but most of it was pretty good.
Have you traveled all the cities around? Like, for example, Beijing, Shanghai.
Yep. So I've been to a lot more than that. Beijing and Shanghai, of course, sort of the main cities on the East Coast that are easy tourist destinations. But outside of that, everywhere from Shenzhen to Zhuhai to Huangshan to Fuzhou to Guangzhou to Guilin to Guiyang to Haikou to Sanya to Xi'an to Inner Mongolia to Hunan, everywhere in the country.
Wow, that's yeah. Like, I'm actually from China. Like, I was born in China, but then I left when I was very young. So I actually didn't really have a chance to travel to many cities in my, in the country that I was born. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, in the future, I want to explore more what China has to offer in terms of the, different type of food. Yeah. Yeah. So you're going back again in the future?
I will, yeah. So when I finish up, the role that I'm in right now at a law firm is called articling. Essentially, it means you finished up law school, you've written the bar exam, etc. And it's the work experience portion before you actually become a lawyer. So I'll finish that up at the end of May. In June, we'll be called to the bar. And then after that, I'll go back to China and start a business.
Oh, okay. Okay. So are you excited, like looking forward to going back again?
Yeah, very much so. I've actually been counting down for the last 300 days.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm very surprised. Can you speak also Cantonese or?
No.
Yeah. Interesting. So I have really because my blog is more about writing about success and self-improvement topics. Like so I'm very curious to know, in your opinion, what is the definition of success? Like, you have been interviewing so many successful bloggers and writers, and you probably have a great insight in what the concept of success is. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I think that really breaks down into two questions, right? And I think the way you sent it to me in the email was really, really interesting wording. You didn't ask, what is the definition of success? You asked, what's your definition of success? Because it is, of course, very much unique to each of us. For me, success sort of equates with freedom. If I had freedom in my life, then I'm very, very, very successful. And the way that I intend to sort of achieve and measure that is, through more common and tangible things. I have a personal goal of earning enough money by the time that I'm employed to not have to work for money, so that after that I can dedicate my life to helping people, and then I'll measure it by how much influence I've had there.
Oh, I see. Because I know you have interviewed Ramit Sethi and Neil Patel and a lot of very, very well-known bloggers, right? So I'm curious, what is your experience of interviewing such a, like, they have a lot of influence in their respective industry, right? What are the key characteristics that make them successful in your own opinion?
Yes, there's probably, there's countless things. We could make a list, 100 things long or more. But there's three that I think really stand out. The first and the most important one is their ability to systemize what they do. So they're able to take, large, complicated tasks, try it once, try it for the first time, learn from it, and then the next time they do it, apply what they've learned in such a way that it takes less time and money and other resources, whatever it happens to be. So, building systems so you know what you're doing is actually valuable use of your resources. A small example of that is, when I did interview Ramit, he talked about when he writes, he actually has a
Yeah.
system for writing better articles. You know, it's
Oh.
not, I'm just going to sit down at the keyboard and whatever inspiration comes to mind, I'm going to
Yeah.
type away.
Yeah.
He actually, you know, he keeps track of articles he's read online over time and, you know, bookmarks them in a certain way through Delicious or whatever, and then he tags them all so that, you know, when he does sit down to write an article, he goes, okay, you know, I need to write an article about, I don't know what it would be, behavioral change for whatever. And then he'll just type those tags into Delicious, he gets what he needs, and then it goes into his article. So it's just a very, very simple system, right? The more complicated ones are where, you know, you're outsourcing work that you would otherwise do yourself to other people because you built a system and they can follow it and they can create the same quality of work that you can. Or something like a sales page, you know, the very systematic testing of that so that you know that it works. So first step to success, definitely systemization. And then the second thing is just plain old working very, very, very hard. Because you have to, right? You can't just put in a couple hours a day or minimal effort and hope that things are going to work out. Neil
true.
I mean, Neil and Ramit, who you brought up, both just work all the time, right? And they absolutely love it. They're both very, very passionate about what they do. But you know, I remember one thing that stuck out in the interview with Neil was he said, you know, the way I have time to run multiple companies and be a consultant and have a top blog is, you know, when I'm on an airplane and everybody else is sleeping, I'm writing blog articles because I can write 2 during the 4 or 5 hour flight, whatever it is. So being busy, being productive. And then the third thing is just being really generous because I think that when you're generous with your time and you try to help other people out, it comes back to you know, 10 times.
Well, in my own experience, you're very generous too. Because I remember when I asked you some, you know, a question, you reply very, very fast. So I was very impressed by that. So now we're talking about a topic on time management. What is your own, insights on how to manage your time properly? Because that is a very popular topic, and a lot of people are interested in that.
Yeah. So honestly, it's not something that I think I'm really, really good at yet. I've certainly tried to improve over time, and I'm getting better. But I do think there are sort of tools and mindsets that your viewers could adopt that would help them out. You know, one of the things I've done is I've started using Google Calendar just to keep track of things that I have to do. And, you know, the actual tool doesn't matter. They can use some other calendar, or they can use, you know, reminders on their phone, or they can just write it down in a notebook. But
personal preference, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what that allows me to do is, you know, I know that on maybe it'll be June 14th, I have to write an article about X because it's going to be due, you know, in June 20th or something. Fine. I can put that in the calendar and I can just forget about it. You know, it's not on my plate now anymore. I think what a lot of people do, and certainly what I've done in the past and continue to do now, is you just carry along this big to-do list of too many things. And it becomes overwhelming. Instead of, you know, taking care of those things one by one, you just look at it and you go, oh God, I have so many things to do, and you put it away and you go watch Netflix, or you go for a walk, or you go do whatever you do that's easier than dealing with that. So that's one really important thing. Just getting it off your mind, getting it onto a calendar so that you can deal with it at the appropriate time. And then the other thing is actually a tool too that's been really helpful for me, which is it's an app on maybe just the iPhone. They might have it for other platforms now too. It's called Mailbox. And it has a really interesting feature, which is that you can just switch the messages. So you can archive them, you can delete them, you can put them, you know, far to the left and schedule it to come back that night or this weekend or a couple months later. And that's the same thing. So what I do is instead of keeping a to-do list, I just email myself, and the subject line is, you know, you have to do X. And then when it comes up on the app, I can just say, oh, I don't want to do that right now. I'll do it tonight. I'll do it next week. I'll do it in a month. I'll do it next year, whenever it happens to be. And again, it gets it off my mind so I can focus on what I have to do now. And by the time if you have 10 of those and you get rid of 9 of them, you only have one thing left to do, and you can actually sit down and do it.
So it keep you more organized in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I needed help with, right? I'm not naturally very organized. I need like a really easy to use tool that can make it happen for me.
Well, I would expect that you will be very organized because you're a lawyer, and then you're an entrepreneur, you're a blogger, so you have so many things on your plate. So I would thought like everything will be under control.
I will. Well, yeah. Don't give me too much credit. You should go tour a law firm sometime. Some of the offices, meticulous, very, very, very organized. Others a little bit more, a little bit messier, but. Everybody's got their own preference. Everyone's got their own way they work, right? Some people swear by the messy office. They say that's way more productive. So,
yeah, that's true. Because I know it's a huge transition from being a corporate, in corporate role in a lawyer, and then being in this online role and writing about, tips and insights on writing well. So, what kind of obstacles did you face when you first started out? I mean, do you have any experience writing any kind of blogs in the past?
I did have a little bit. So where I first started writing was just when I travel. When I was a kid, I went to Europe, Japan, Korea, etc. And I just have like I think it was Windows Live MySpace blog or whatever it happened to be.
Long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's just this instant thing, right? And you could still put up photos and you could write your thing. And was anybody reading it? Probably a few of my friends were, but it was journaling for me, right? Keeping track of my travels, and I did other writing like that. When even when I went back to China this time, I didn't do a blog, but I kept an email list of all my friends, and I'd send out a huge ass email every few weeks. But when it actually came down to the blog, no, I was learning it. And the same as anybody else, starting from the bottom up. And I think I did have an advantage, which was, of course, I was interviewing all of these really successful bloggers, figuring out what they did, and then I'd do my best to actually apply those lessons to emulate it. This is aside from the writing, but I interviewed a lady named Pamela Wilson. She has a blog called Big Brand System. And that's what I wanted to learn about, right? I wanted to learn about branding because even though I've read about it in the past, I did an undergrad in business and stuff. I didn't know branding as it applies to blogs and an online presence. So, in that interview, she talked about some of the most important things, like for the design of a blog, the colors really, really matter. The font you use really, really matters because, if it's distinctive and also very readable, then it's good. So she had a couple of great tips that I took from that interview, and that exact same night I went on and I redesigned my blog, and it's pretty much as it looks now, which is much better than it did in the past. So I mean, it looks
very professional.
It was all learning step by step, and same for the writing. In the past, I would have done what any other blogger does when they first start, which is you sit down, you just kind of write whatever's on your mind for 15 minutes, and then you press publish, and actually nobody reads it. So what I learned over time was that by writing, really, really long, extraordinarily detailed articles, you can actually do a lot better. So, putting 10, 12, 20 hours into one piece of work is a much, much better payoff than spending that same amount of time writing 30, 40 small articles. You had
because it shows that you have in-depth knowledge and insight when you write a long article or a detailed article instead of short posts. It's more like more general.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows how much effort you put into it.
Yeah, I think people appreciate that effort, especially online where it's so easy to create content, right? Now that being said, you had kind of phrased the question as in difficulties that I had getting started, and there were a couple, and one of them was just the technical setup of doing video interviews. Skype interviews, okay, no problem, but as you know, I was in China at the time, and the challenge there was China blocks YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and a site called Blit.tv, which is actually where I'd upload and post my videos. So because I couldn't access Blit, I'd have to record the interviews, send them to Canada. Somebody in Canada would upload them for me, send me the code. I'd put it on my site. I'd hit publish. And even once it was published, I couldn't watch the videos on my own blog. Right? So it's pretty...
I know. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, it was a little bit frustrating. And then the other thing is... So I was coming back from Inner Mongolia back to Beijing. It's like an 18, 20-hour train ride, something like this. And I was keeping myself to a schedule. Because, I don't think you have to post every day. I don't think you have to post every week. But... You do have to be consistent. So I said, I'm going to post every Monday or whatever it is. And that happened to be Monday. And I was on a train in the middle of nowhere. And I just had my iPhone and I was going on to, WordPress, and their mobile system at the time wasn't particularly good. And trying to take the code that the person had given me and copying it into the little phone thing and write a little introduction and then hit publish. And it did go live, but it was ridiculous, the technical setup I was trying to make.
I'm sure your loyal readers will understand it. You try to make the effort.
I guess so. I hope so. And on top
of
that...
But because I know they have a sort, they call...
They have which, sorry?
Weibo, have you heard of that?
Weibo,
the Chinese blocking.
Absolutely. And then there was actually one other thing which was different, which was the time scheduling, because 12 or 13 hours time difference depending on the time of year, and connecting with bloggers, authors, whatever in Canada and the US was challenging. There's actually a couple of people that I really wanted to interview that I didn't get to end up doing. One was Steve Cam of Nerd Fitness. We had actually scheduled an interview, and then it fell through because my landlord in China hadn't paid his power bill, and I didn't have electricity or internet to be able to interview Steve. And then another one was Corbett Barr from what's the site? Think Traffic. Yeah. So we had emailed back a couple of times. He said, I'd love to do an interview, but we never actually were able to figure out a good time that worked. So, I mean, those were challenges that were unique to me. Anybody who starts, trying to have an online presence is going to have something.
Yeah, that's true though. I mean, especially when you're in different countries, and especially a big time zone difference, like China and the US. So everybody has to make sure that the time fits for both of you, right? So that's pretty challenging.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges you've had getting started?
Well, because I actually have a business background too. I studied commerce in university, and I was planning to be an accountant. But then somehow when I was working, I don't really feel happy in what I'm doing. So I'm thinking, why should I try to, look into things that I like to do? And one of the things that's come up that I like to do is I like personal development. So I read books on productivity, motivation, success, all these different topics. I want to improve myself. And that's how I want to write a blog on these topics, because it's also a way for me to express my point of view on these different topics. And that's why when I interview you, I want to know what is your own definition of success and your own personal experience dealing from being, transition in a career. Yeah. So,
so that's away from a very safe professional career, right? It's it's a big deal, but I don't think that's something that's unique to the two of us. There's actually quite a few people that I've spoken with, and I'm sure many, many more out there that are doing the same thing.
Are you ever thinking of writing something related to law or something related to what you've been doing in the past, or you just feel like I just want to write on this topic on entrepreneurship, writing, and
At some point in the future, I'll come back to writing. It's not a priority for me right now. As I said, I'm going back to China. I'm planning to go into the food service business there because that's what inspires me right now. But I do love to write, and I do love to connect with other people online, etc. And maybe 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future, I'll come back and I'll make that the full-time effort.
Oh, I see. So would right now the blogging be more intent on what you're going to do, like your business? So it won't be like full time, but more like in line with the business I'm going to do in the future.
Even now, I'm not actively blogging. Write Reviews has been on hold for it seems like almost a year now. Just with the same interviews up there, nothing new is going on. I've done a couple of articles online, either for freelance income or because I'd written it before and I just wanted to get posted, but otherwise it's not where the effort is anymore.
I see. So basically you want to focus more on the business side right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and the goal for me right now is to earn and save as much money as I can, because starting a business,
of course,
starting a business is expensive, right? So, while blogging can eventually lead to an income and very, very substantial ones. I mean, some of the people I interviewed have earned millions of dollars with their blogs. But that's 5, 6, 7, 10-year effort. Not, I'm just going to do it for a year and hope that I make a lot of money. So maybe this comes down to time management, where I'm prioritizing my time is the things that I can do now that earn me, a definite amount of money, so that I can save that and I can apply that to the business.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because that's how you want to, ensure that your finances are okay. Because blogging, even though people are blogging for their passion, but they also want to make sure that they can have money to pay the bills and all this stuff. So it makes sense that you want to either monetize your blog or you blog and you have another business going on at the same time. So that's how it was in your case, right?
Yeah, kind of. When I was in China, when I was doing Write Reviews, I had income from 2 other sources. One was the business that I had run previously, the one that was like Groupon. I actually sold that. I just stuck all the money in the bank and I used that to travel and live and support myself, etc. But then I also, while I was there, I did a little bit of freelancing work. And especially while you're overseas, money goes a long, long way. So, you write, you write one article a week, every couple of weeks, you make a few $100. That's enough to pay for your living, food, etc. Too much.
Yeah. Because I do believe that the standard of living in China is a bit lower compared to in Canada.
I don't know that it's lower. It's certainly different.
Yeah. When I went back, I find that they change a lot. Like compared when I grew up in the village that I was, every time I go back, there's always something new happening.
Yeah.
So the change is very rapid there.
The village where you were born is probably now a mega city of like 10 million people with skyscrapers and whatever else, right? Major tourist destinations. Yeah, it changes pretty quickly. Even from when I went the first time in 2008 until I went again in 2011, completely different.
See, it's only like 2-3 years difference, and you can all see all the changes starting to happen.
Yeah.
So any kind of projects you're going to work on besides your business for 2013?
No, that's the only priority. So I do believe that for me and for most people, you're better off focusing on one major thing, and that's where your time and your money and your attention goes. Because if you distract yourself, if you spread yourself too thin, everything falls down, right? Everything fails. And I've tried that in the past. I talked about testing 3 things last year. Trying to operate 3 businesses, trying to operate 3 major projects is tough. It's really, really demanding on your time. You just wear yourself out.
Yeah, so, even if you don't have a family to take care of, it's very demanding.
Oh yeah, if you had a family, it would be demanding times 2. I don't know how some people do it, but no, for me, there's just the one major focus, and then I'll probably, I'll continue with some freelance work to make sure that I have income until the business gets going. But that's it.
So just one last question to wrap our interview. So if, let's say, someone comes to you, right? Like, Michael, I want to have some advice on, I want to be doing something similar to you, like travel around the world, like how you travel to China. What kind of advice do you want to give someone in order to give you, have less mistakes? Like, for example, you travel, you do different things. What kind of advice do you give if someone is interested in being multi-passionate or doing different projects?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a long list of stuff too. The first one though is straight up financial though, right? It's one of the things that you hear, an excuse you hear from people all the time, which is, oh, I don't have enough money to travel. I don't have time to travel. I have da. Well, that's only because you choose to prioritize your money on other things. And if you spend all of your money on eating out and on clothing and on going to a movie every week or whatever it happens to be, that stuff adds up. And then you won't have money to go to China for 3 months or 4 months or a year or whatever it happens to be, or Europe or Japan or Australia or wherever you want to go. So the first thing is you have to get your finances in order. I'll do a little plug here, which is, Ramit Sethi. Very, very, very smart guy, very, very, very good in business in the blogging world, etc. But he actually made a start in personal finance, and I'd very much recommend any of your viewers to, look at maybe his book or even just his blog articles, which are of course free, to get their finances in order if they want travel to be a goal in the future. And I'm going to add a disclaimer here, which is that you may have seen I've worked with Ramit for his company. So, complete disclosure, it's somebody that I've worked with, but it's also very, very good information that will be valuable to them. Once you have that, then I think the next step is just mental, right? Convincing yourself to go do it, buying the ticket, going to a destination, and continuing to manage it in the way that you can. So, don't just go to some resort and sit on a beach for a couple of weeks. Go to a country that inspires you. Go, for me, that means going to climb mountains and trek through little villages and all this other stuff. So, and those are the biggest ones. And otherwise, you had also asked about sort of multi-projects and having all these things going on. Again, I'd recommend against it. Just doing one thing is better. But if you are going to do multiple things, the key is to just do the best job you can on all of them. Even though I was doing so many things, I was still, if you looked at any of them individually, I was still putting in a lot of effort. I was still working very, very hard to make it work.
I see. Yeah, that's true. So thank you so much, Michael, for this amazing interview and sharing your insights with me here. Thank you so much.